Oh, hi, everybody. Welcome to Martinis with Scott. Thank you for joining me. Cheers. I know I'm on coffee this afternoon. We're busy. We're in a deal because we have big news coming up. I'm going to talk to you I'm going to talk about that later in the show. What I want to talk about this morning, I hope you're all doing great, by the way. What I want to talk about this morning is when do you level up your business? When do you level up your business? When is the time right to move to the next step? Specifically, if you're in a crisis, how do you know the crisis is over? How do you say, okay, I'm out of crisis mode. I'm out of trying to save my business. Now I'm going to move to growing my business, trying to get back to normal, whatever your goal is coming out of a particular crisis, like the global pandemic that we have been in. What is the right time? How do you know? I think it's one of the most difficult things. I think it's as important as surviving the crisis is having a strategy to exit the crisis and get to where you need to be to level up. Last week and the week before, I spent 10 days on the road. I think I touched place in 11 cities. A lot of repeats in there. I think I went my hometown here, Fernie, British Columbia, so a small little town, to Calgary, which is about a three and a half hour drive. From Calgary to Toronto. From Toronto to, I was supposed to get up to Novani and Coldwater, north of Barrie, Ontario, but that didn't happen because there were some utility problems there. But anyways, to Montreal, to Sherbrooke, back to Montreal is 6, back to Toronto, back to Calgary, to Victoria, BC, back to Calgary, back to Fernie. There's 11. There's 11 stops along that tour within 10 days and a 3-hour time difference. And I covered each one of the each one of the 3-hour time difference on those stops. And so it was a lot of traveling, and it felt to me like the crisis, in many respects, like the crisis is over. The global pandemic is over. I am back to traveling like it used to be. I've got to do a similar U.S. swing in the next week or two here, if I can pull that off logistically. But on the other hand, it's not really like we're post-pandemic and we're back to pre-COVID levels, because nothing works when you're traveling. Nothing is the same as it used to be. And I don't just mean mask inconsistencies. In some jurisdictions, you don't need to wear a mask in the store. In my hometown, we have indoor dining. You can walk into a store without a mask on. Into most stores without a mask on. If a store is asking you to wear a mask, it's the store's rules, not the provincial or state rule, that's causing that to happen. And by the way, if you're a business owner and you're the only shop in town that requires people to wear a mask to come inside, how long do you think your business is going to last? If you if you were a customer and you wanted to go for a coffee, and there was a choice of 4 good coffee shops in town, some boutiques, a Starbucks, something like that, and you knew that one of them required you to wear a mask and the rest of them don't, which coffee store are you going to go to? Are you going to go to the mask one, or are you just going to avoid that? I don't think this stores mandating masks to shop in there is going to last very long. Right? You're not going to want to go in there. I certainly don't. It is amazing to me, if you're in a jurisdiction where you still have to wear a mask, oh my God, you just don't, you have no idea how good it feels to not wear the mask when you're out and about. As long as you have that superpower of vaccination and you're not worried about that, it's just, it's an amazing feeling. And I have to tell you, I didn't mind wearing masks. I wasn't an anti-masker. I was fine with the mask until you stop wearing it, and then you're not fine, my experience, then you're not fine with it at all. Anyways, when I'm traveling, nothing works. Sometimes you have to wear a mask. You gotta wear a mask in the airport, on the plane the whole time, right? Even if you're vaccinated, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You have the airport check-ins. Depending on what airline you're on, the rules are completely different. Do you have to show ID? Do you not have to show ID? The whole process for going through this was amended for COVID, and it's just a shit show. Nobody really seems to know what they're doing, and every airline seems to deal with things different. The procedures are all different. The security lines, right? There's no Nexus line. Nexus, for those of you outside Canada, US, is a customs control card that sort of prioritizes you because you're pre-cleared for security and all that sort of stuff. So those lines don't exist. Priority lines, you have business class tickets, or you're a points member that allows you to jump into the security line, give you sort of a zone 1, tier 1 rating. That doesn't exist. Mostly because they're doing the temperature checks, I think. So, but they could break it out after that into priority or non-priority, but they don't bother with that. So there's no priority lines, and the security lines, because of travel, the loads are getting back up there, and the airlines are adding more planes. The airport administration hasn't adjusted their security process, so there's massive lineups with people standing, bumped up against each other. If you're on the podcast, I'm banging my hands together as if you're two human beings bumped up together, but there's no social distancing of any sort in these security lineups. Taxis, like it's really hard to get a taxi. By the way, on the taxi note, did you know that at Trudeau Airport, which is the main domestic airport in Montreal, Canada's, second largest city, I think. It's a real city. For those of you that have never been to Montreal, it's a great city. Did you know that if you got in a taxi outside of arrivals and you went, say, a tenth of a mile to the next door or somewhere that you could walk 10 minutes, there's a minimum $20 charge no matter what you do for, what it should be a $5 taxi ride? I mean, that again, I believe that that's a COVID thing. I don't know that to be true. Maybe people from Montreal can tell me what the history of that is. I can tell you in the middle of the night when I was tired and grumpy, I thought the guy was lying to me. And so I caused a fuss over this. I took a picture of the taxi license and all that sort of stuff. But I was wrong. And he was right. So that's on me. Anyways, hard to get a taxi. Car rentals. I'm going to tell you a car rental story in a minute. But, you've read, since my trip, there's been all sorts of articles about there just being no cars available in North America for car rentals because they basically shut down for COVID and then didn't bother to ramp up again. They didn't see the end of the crisis and the rise for the demand. I'm staying, when I'm on these trips, I'm not going from the airports, which are on the outskirts of town of whatever city you're in. I'm not heading down to the Four Seasons or the I'm a Hilton Diamond member, which is a Waldorf and, whatever, high-end brands. I'm not doing that. I'm staying by the airport in a motel, maybe in a DoubleTree or something, just crash. So you get up in the morning and go to your next destination. There's no food. There's no food in any of these hotels. I was in a bunch of places with no food. No room service. Like, you need to think ahead and try and figure this out because they're not doing what they used to be doing. So the customer experience is crap. In all of these situations, security lines, taxis, rental cars, hotels, the customer experience is nowhere close to where it used to be. Now, maybe I'm getting more frustrated with this because as a consumer, my expectations have changed. I used to be the first one during COVID. People would complain that this isn't working and that's not working. And I would say, even with the governments, I'd say, I don't normally have a lot of empathy or sympathy for the people making these decisions and being our leaders. But in this particular case, in this global pandemic, no one knows what the hell is going on. They're just trying to see what works and what doesn't work. And we need to have patience with that, right? Maybe I'm over that. Maybe I'm just over that. I think the end is here, and other people, the leaders, haven't planned for the end. And I think that might be a combination of what's going on here, which begs the question, why I'm covering this theme today. When is a crisis over? If you are the hotel, if you're the taxi company, if you're the rental car company, when is the crisis over? How do you know when to start ramping back up? When is normal? When do you start improving the customer experience, communicating to customers that you're going to do that, and it's going to take a period of time. We can't turn it around overnight. When do you start doing that? I've told the story on this show before. And those that know me already know that when I was younger, I was involved in racing dirt bikes, motocross at a professional level. I'm not suggesting I was any good at it, but I did do that for a while at a professional level. And when you're racing dirt bikes outdoors, it always occurred to me, even when I was really young, the thing that I struggled with the most is a muddy track. So you're raining. It's raining. The track is muddy. It's sloppy. It's slippery. It's deep ruts. You can't see. Your goggles are covered in mud, and you ran out of tear-offs, and you got to pull your goggles down. And I actually was fine with mud. I like riding in mud. That wasn't really the problem. The problem is the track, because it's outdoors, you're not running on the road, you're running on dirt, it changes every lap. And what it tends to do, unless it's just raining all the time, which it doesn't do, it rains and then it dries up, and it rains and it dries up, is the track tends to dry up. And when the track dries up and the corners become more defined and all that sort of stuff, you can go faster. You can go faster, but it's a really difficult mental transition. You get into mud riding speed, which is pretty slow, and then all of a sudden the track's way better, but you didn't notice it. You're just riding around in mud riding speed on what is now a much drier track, and people start passing you and you go, hey, what's going on? How are they going so fast in the mud? And then you kind of wake up and realize, oh, it's not that muddy anymore, right? It's not, it's kind of dried up, but the crisis is over, but I didn't recognize it, right? That was always hard for me as a rider, as a racer, and I think it's the exact same in business. It's like, one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs from back in the day, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun, right? What was that? Time, I think, was the name of that song. No one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. If your business is in trouble, when is it not in trouble? How do you define that? If the globe is in a crisis, when is it not in a crisis? What is the definition of that? What is the motivation for a leader to say, hey, we're not in a crisis anymore, right? Where's the motivation for that? If you're a fellow, I don't want to be political about this, but let's look at Fauci. Fauci in the US, a name everybody recognizes, love him, hate him, whatever. It's a name everybody recognizes. Have you ever heard the name Fauci before COVID? You haven't, right? Now picture yourself as being Fauci. And this global pandemic comes, and you're on the news every day, and for half the country, you're a rock star. Half the country hates you, for sure, but for half the country, you're a rock star. No one knew your name. You're an older guy in your career. I'm not saying he's old. I have no idea how old he is, but you're at the senior part of your career. No one's ever heard your name before, and all of a sudden this pandemic comes along, and it's a validation of everything you've done since you were a kid, right? You took interest in this side of medicine. You went to school again, probably. I have no idea what his educational background is, but he's a doctor or a scientist, whatever he is, right? So he spent a lot of time in school. He did whatever he did to get his accreditation. He went to become a civil servant. He became the leader in his department. And nobody ever heard his name, and then bang, this global pandemic comes along, and he's the man. He's the guy up on TV every single day telling us what to do, and he's in control. If you're Fauci, what is your motivation to say, you know what, we're all good. We're all good. It's over. We're all good. What's your motivation for doing it? You don't even have to listen to me anymore. We're all good. I'm just going to go back. You're going to forget about me 3 months from now. No one's going to know my name again. What is his motivation for doing that? If he's the fellow in control, when? When does he do that? And the answer is when we, as a population, make him when we just stop listening to him because we're not buying him anymore, because he's never going to do it on his own, because there's always going to be another reason. I saw that the Biden administration was looking at reinstating mask mandates yesterday because of these variants. They're starting to track the Delta and other variants in the U.S. Now we're talking about the monkey flu coming out of China, the new one that's coming. When will this ever stop? When the leaders won't stop it on their own, right? It has to come from the bottom up. It has to come from the consumers, because no one knows when to stop a crisis. And if the crisis, no one knows when to declare a crisis over, I should put it that way. And if the crisis is working for you, what's your motivation for declaring an end to the crisis? Doesn't really, you're not motivated at all. Here's another example, more of a business example, because we are a business show for the most part. Another example of the crisis not being over, I've given the Fauci example. How about the entire global supply chain of everything? The entire global supply chain of everything is in a crisis. I tried to order steel before I signed on here to do this show for Navani, and the fellow came back and said, yeah, here's your increased pricing. It's really expensive, and we may get delivery in January. This is July. This is July right now. I'm trying to order Q4, so October, November, December supply, and they're talking about delivery in January. They're talking about a 5 to 6 month lead time on steel deliveries for what used to be 30 days or from the intermediary. Global supply chains are in a crisis for absolutely everything. And the reason is because none of these companies were able to foresee a way out of the crisis. They were looking to survive. Now demand's ramping up, and they haven't ramped up to deal with that. I landed at Trudeau Airport in Montreal, whenever that was, more than a week ago now, but on my 10-day journey. And I landed at, I think, 11:30 p.m. I had a rental car booked with Hertz. It's 11:30 p.m. And when I land, you're on the tarmac, you pull out your phone, you check your emails. And there's an email there, and the email says, Hertz sold out. That's the subject line. Hertz sold out, J816, like whatever, the reservation number. Then the email body says, good evening, Mr. Sinclair. I tried calling to inform you. By the way, he tried calling while I was on my flight. They have your flight number for when you land, so they know you're on a flight. He says, I tried calling you that we ran out of cars tonight and for you not to come to the counter. Would it be possible for you to come tomorrow around 11 a.m.? I will notify my morning agent to put something aside for you. And again, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. Good night and stay safe. Airport location manager. I won't give you his name. They ran out of cars tonight. Do you mind coming by at 11 a.m.? So by the time I'm off the plane, get my luggage, it's midnight, 12:15. You've been working all day. You're traveling. You're tired. And now, my good fortune, I had an airport hotel booked because I was going to pick up the car, stay overnight, head out early to the deal that I'm working on. That's a couple hours from there, and I need to do it by car. And sorry, I'm getting 8 million messages here. I'm trying to close off. I'm going to quit that application, and I have people that send me chat messages during the day, and basically they put 1 or 2 words into each chat. So if it's a 10-word sentences, it comes in 5 messages, bing, 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 and just pops up on my screen here to distract me. It's sometimes frustrating. So I was going to stay over anyways, but what if you landed at midnight and you're tired and grumpy and exhausted and you actually had somewhere you had to go? What if you were going to, drive home or drive to somewhere you were staying where you had a reservation? And what if it was an hour and a half away, and that was the end of your journey, and you show up and Hertz says, no, we don't have any cars for you. How about you just drop by at 11 in the morning? How much money does that cost you to change your plans and book a new hotel and then you're already stuck with the one you're reserved. What if you were just there for the next day on a sales call? And now, like my business appointment was 2 hours away. So now they want me to pick it up at 11, right? So I'm out of there at say 11:30, which means I'm not getting to where I'm going by 1:30. What if it was just a sales call and I need to get back to the airport that afternoon? It's basically my whole business trip is blowing because of this issue, right? And so I'm not saying that Hertz should never run out of cars. They clearly, that was my point to the fellow, is you shouldn't be short on cars. That's just bad management. But I understand we're coming out of a crisis. I understand you don't have enough cars because you cut back on your inventory, you haven't been buying and all that sort of stuff. But two things should happen here. Number one is, if you don't have enough cars, don't take the reservation. Like, this wasn't a problem. This wasn't an error. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't bad planning. This is, you made a choice. You made a choice to take more reservations than vehicles, right? And even if there's a 1 or 2 car delta on that, and I have some empathy for this issue because I'm not great at returning my cars on time. So, you're running a reservation system and you plan on the cars coming back in, you clean them up, now they can go back out. But what if the fellow or the gal didn't bring back the car when they were supposed to, which I do all the time? Well, okay, so it could happen, you're short. But then I'm at Hertz a President's Council Gold member, okay, which is, I don't know what that means, but it's the top tier of the loyalty. And what is a loyalty program? A loyalty program is me saying to Hertz, I will be loyal to you and you be loyal to me. Or Hertz saying, hey, you be loyal to us, and it's signified by this card and the President's Council thing, and we'll be loyal to you. So if you're short on the cars, why me? Why me? That's not like, I don't understand how you could both take a reservation and not have the cars available. And if so, if you're short 1 or 2 cars, why are you picking the person in the top tier of your loyalty program to screw when the person shows up at midnight? I don't know that makes any sense, or that that's good business. And I'm not wishing someone else was screwed on this. And again, for me, it turned out to be not that big of a deal. But let's just think about the business side of this and not my personal experience. Think about the business side of this. What if you were a rental company and you had figured out a way to not only survive the crisis, Hertz went through bankruptcy and all that sort of stuff, but you figured out a way to survive the crisis, but also to be ready to exit the crisis. And what if you were able to say to me, hey, I know you're a President's Council of those terrible people Hertz, but we over here at XYZ Rental Company, we have stock. We'll honor the loyalty program. Why don't you come over and move your business forever over to us? I would have done that. And I have done that. I did exactly. That's how I ended up on WestJet instead of Air Canada. One day, Air Canada was treating me very badly, even though I was a 100,000 mile a year person, and I had a minor tantrum, not one of my finest moments. And I walked down and I went to WestJet, told them the story, and they signed me up top platinum level, whatever they are over there, and now they get my 100,000 miles, and I've been as loyal to them as humanly possible. Depending on the legs that the routes that they're flying. So, I mean, what an opportunity if you were a rental company and you could figure that out. That would be amazing, right? And that's effectively, you've heard the turnaround of Roofers World on this show before. A company that I own through my company Sinclair Range was a troubled company. I mean, Roofers World is up. It's a small business, but it's up probably 50%. We'll see how the rest of the year works out, but it's up 50% this year. Now, our deliveries are awesome. A lot of branding work this year. We've got new customers coming on. There's a lot of good stuff that's driving this, but one good thing that's driving it is we have supply, because we thought ahead on the supply chain issue, and we got a bunch of product in the queue, and we haven't been having any difficulty with that, maybe by good fortune, maybe by good planning. I like to think planning, but we were the ones that were able to say to the retailers that we sell these tools through, hey, we have product. Those guys over there that you used to have listed or you still have listed, but they don't supply you, they don't have product. We're getting all the business. And the business and the listings feed the branding work that we're already doing. And it's been a tremendous cycle. And the reason is because we were not only trying to survive the crisis by doing all the things that I've told you about that you need to do in a crisis before, which is to have really, really clear priorities, limited priorities, and focus on those priorities and nothing else. Remember, my 3 priorities were health and safety of my employees. Sorry, not health and safety of my employees. That's another business that I'm working on. That's priority. But during the crisis was the ensuring that my employees were getting a paycheck and they could eat and get their rent paid, and whether that be through our company or helping them with government programs. Think back a year ago when things were terrible. Number 2, the mental health of our employees, which means over communicating, letting them know what's going on. And number 3 was doubling down and leapfrogging our competition so that we're not the ones paralyzed by fear, because I was of the view 18 months ago that everybody would be paralyzed by fear, and what a great opportunity to leapfrog the competition. That's exactly what I'm talking about today. These companies like Hertz were paralyzed by fear. They did not have a plan to exit the crisis. Our competition at Roofers World have not exited the crisis. They didn't deal with their stuff, and we are leapfrogging the competition. Navani Stainless, another turnaround that we talk about on this show, has been the opposite. We had a major win in that we went through our balance sheet restructuring after I bought that company. We're in terrific shape financially as a result. But what we didn't do is lock down our supply chain like we did at Roofers World. And we've had shortages and we've had closures and we're not shipping and we're not producing. It's not good. It's not good, and it's costing me a lot of money, and that's a mistake. And so there's 2 extreme examples within my own portfolio, within the companies that I manage. This is not me, by the way. I'm president of all these companies. This is on me, but there's an example. You need to survive a crisis, but just as important, you need to exit the crisis. You need to know when, or you have to have a plan to know when you're going to exit, and you have to have a plan for how you're going to exit. And I can't even give you rules for that. Like, the first thing that you need to understand is you can't just focus on surviving the crisis. You need to also focus on how you're going to come out of the crisis and when you're going to come out of the crisis. Just understanding that that's an issue is half the battle. 3/4 of the battle, okay? And then, again, I don't have rules. I can't tell you when the starting gun is, in the words of Pink Floyd. But I'll tell you this, if you're able to look at the world, if you're able to look at your business, and you're able to do that with optimism, okay? Look at your business, the world, your life with optimism, and double down on your core strengths and dominate within your core strengths, it's going to sort itself out, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, no one ever pulls the starting gun. There's never a bang. There's never a ready, set, go. You need to be bumping up as much as you can all the time and pushing your business forward even during the crisis. But don't be jumping around and starting new product lines or whatever. Focus on your core strengths. Make sure you're ready to go. Make sure you're pushing it to the max of your resources all the time, and it'll take care of itself. But just remember, if the globe is in a crisis, if your business is in a crisis, if your life is in a crisis, no one's ever going to tell you when that's over. No one's ever going to say you're not in a crisis anymore. You need to figure that out. You need to find a way with positivity, optimism, focusing on what's working for you and not focusing on what's negative, and find a way out, because no one's going to tell you when to start. All right, that's that topic. What else are we talking about today? Benevolence. I may have to hurry the show up before my computer runs out of battery. I have talked to you on previous shows recently about benevolence, and specifically, if you missed it, I gave the story, which I stole from someone on Clubhouse, about competence. Competence. When we're doing a pitch, when we're trying to say, "Hey, my name's Scott, and I run this business, and you should buy with us because I make the best damn steel sinks and deliver on time, and I'm really competent about that." So there's a pitch that we would all do. I'm an investment banker. I'm an accountant. I'm really good at it. I'm good at turning around companies. Here's my history and my education that tells you how competent I am at that, right? That is a bad pitch, okay? More important than competence is trust. And the example was, if you have a coworker and the coworker is going to give a PowerPoint presentation and they come to work and they screw it up, it's half done, it's got spelling errors and math errors, they're not competent, how do you feel about that coworker? Well, you think to yourself, that person's not competent, it's frustrating, maybe you're a little angry, but you're not really angry. Like it's not an emotional event for you. It's just a frustrating, this person's not competent, and that's a problem. But what if the coworker comes in and says to you, I've nailed this, I've been working on it for weeks, and you can rely on me, and I know that my PowerPoint presentation is going to impact the work that you're doing, that you've been working on for a month, but trust me, I got this made. And then they screw things up and they broke your trust because it was an outright lie. How do you feel about that person now? Well, you feel a lot more emotionally pissed off, angry with that person, right? Not because of the competence, but because of the trust issue. So trust is a higher value for humans than competence is. And then, so you don't want to be lied to, right? Trust is a higher value. Now, you're out with your best friend and your best friend says, "Hey, come for a ride with me in the car. We got to do this and that. I need your help." And you're with your buddy, and your buddy takes you not to do the thing that they said they were going to do. That was a lie, but they took you to a surprise party because it's your birthday. And there's 100 people there. They all jump out. They yell, "Surprise!" Are you mad at that person? Are you angry with that person on an emotional level for having lied to you? And the answer is no. And why? Because humans value benevolence, a good thought about you, wanting good for you. They value benevolence even more than they value trust, and trust more than competence. So the pitch, when you're pitching something, if you're pitching competence, you're doing it wrong. You need to pitch benevolence. And if it's appropriate, fear is even stronger than benevolence, but fear is only appropriate in certain industries. Think about the financial industry. Think about selling securities and financial planning and insurance products. Are they selling benevolence or are they selling fear? If you don't buy this product, you're screwed. You're gonna retire bankrupt, right? I mean, that's the pitch. Fear is greater than benevolence, but you can't use fear everywhere. And I think there's both ethical and practical restrictions on selling fear. So I like to focus on benevolence. So I did that show. I think it's really important. I've written some articles on it as well. It's an important concept that I like a lot. And I received an email from a loyal listener. And I just want to read this to you. I'm not going to give any secrets as to who this person was away because it was private. But the email says, "Hi, Scott. I listened to the benevolence episode the day before a job interview by happenstance, and it helped me land the job. Thank you. Prior to listening to it, I was going to pitch competence like a robot. The script was all about what I did, how I saw myself, and after listening to the episode, I shifted it to how I will help the company, and actually said the words, quote, 'This is how I can help you,' end quote, during the interview a few times. The framing made me appear softer and secured the ultimate win for me. It's not my instinct to sell, so pitching myself effectively was unnatural to me. Thank you." Amazing. Amazing. I mean, the whole point of this show for me, there's a lot of shows, but I just want to help people, right? I want to help people succeed in their business and their life, and there's an example of that. And I believe it's that same person, by the way, who has urged me for, as a loyal listener, for months and months and months since I moved to this home office studio that I'm in right now, on this metal desk that makes a clunk bunch of sound on my cup, to get some coasters. Well, I did. I brought in these coasters, which I bought at the Cairo airport. And so I just wanted to give that back to you. Benevolence is greater than trust, is greater than competence. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be competent. Okay, competence is a threshold to get in the door, but you need to sell on benevolence. You need to create that relationship and sell on benevolence. All right, what else do we have here? We got some time. I have some battery. I want to talk about SISP, Sale Investment Solicitation Process, 363 sales in the U.S. What does all that mean? You have a bankrupt company or a company operating in receivership or under bankruptcy protection, being monitored and protected by the courts. You need to restructure your balance sheet because you have too much debt, right? Just make this as simple as possible. You have too much debt. You want to restructure, but you can't. You can't restructure because the creditors at the end of the day have to agree. Yes, I will take 10 cents on the dollar, or yes, I'll take 50 cents on the dollar spread out over 5 years, right? Always when you're negotiating and restructuring, you're negotiating for the amount that's going to be paid and what time is going to be paid over and what happens in between. That's what you're always negotiating for. So X cents on the dollar, how many years to pay that? Is it paid right now or over time? And how is that creditor protected during that period? 100% of the time, and that's what you're negotiating for. And if the creditors say no, well, what do? And the only thing left, if it's impossible, is you have to sell the assets of the business. You just have to sell the business, get as much money as you can, and pay it to the creditors in the order that the creditors rank. Okay? Those are your, in simple terms, your two choices. Well, what is that sales process? It entirely depends on what jurisdiction you're in. In Canada, they do these days what's called a SISP, S-I-S-P, Sales Investment Solicitation Process, which just means the receiver or the monitor or somebody goes out and tries to sell the business, not the company, the business. So the assets out of the company that's in protection, that's in bankruptcy protection. In the US, you could have what's called a 363 sale. But in every jurisdiction, there's this similar concept. In the you can do the same thing with administration in the UK. Same concept. You got a business, got a bunch of assets, and they sell. Someone else buys them. They don't have any debt anymore. They got the assets. They wrote a check, and that check goes to the people that are owed the money in order of how they're owed the money. So, example, person came into my office a week or 10 days ago, and they said, hey, there's a good deal here. There's 4 pieces of real estate being sold out of a company. So it's a company and it owns nothing but 4 commercial/industrial buildings, and it has a lease stream on those 4 buildings. And they're spread around the province that they happen to be in. And these people, let's say they're worth $2 million each. So the company owns 4 buildings, $2 million roughly appraisal value each is $8 million. And we want to buy just this one in our local town. And we'll even pay a little more than $2 million because, we have inside knowledge on this. We can put in a tenant, we can increase the lease stream, we can do this, whatever. Whatever you think your advantage is in wanting to buy this particular asset. And the receiver is going through a SISP process, a sales investment solicitation process. They're selling these buildings, right? As is, where is. They're not giving you any reps or warranties. They're just selling the business. And you're okay, I want to buy one out of the selling the assets, I want to buy one out of the 4 buildings. So they've come to me and they said, do you want to help us with this? Do you want to partner with? And because we have inside knowledge of the local community, we're willing to pay, more than $2 million, which the building is worth, not a lot more, but enough to lock in the deal. We're guaranteed to win. We're guaranteed to win this because no one will outbid us on this building, right? We have a competitive advantage. Are we guaranteed to win? To which I said, nope. In fact, you're almost guaranteed to lose. Now, why is that? It's important if you want to buy businesses, if you're trying to restructure your businesses, it's important to understand how these processes work. And the way to do that is to think about the receiver's problem. Don't think about your advantage in trying to buy that one building. What is the receiver's job? Well, the receiver's job is not to get the most for that particular building, is to get the most for the 4 buildings in aggregate, to get the most money for the creditors of the company that's in bankruptcy, not on individual assets, on the 4 companies. And if you're just bidding on one of the assets, one of the 4 buildings in this case, you're probably going to lose. So let me give you some more facts in this situation as presented to me. There's a first mortgage that covers all of these buildings, and the first mortgage is around $5.5 million, let's say. Okay, don't try to turn this into an actual example. I'm just telling you what I was told, and I'm not even sure I'm reciting it back to you accurately, but I'm just giving you the points here. So there's 4 buildings worth 2 each. That adds up to $8 million. There's a first mortgage of $5.5 million. There's a second mortgage of $12 million. Okay, and there's going to be receiver fees. And the receiver fees are going to be, let's just make up a number. Let's say $1 million, okay? So if the receiver got $8 million, 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, the appraisal value for the 4 buildings, then what would happen? Well, of the $8 million, $1 million would be paid to the receiver because they come first, and the professionals, so that's $7 million left over. Of the 7, they have to pay next to the first mortgage, which is $5.5 million, which leaves $1.5 million left over to be paid to the second mortgage holder, and the second mortgage is $12 million. So the person with the second mortgage would expect to collect $1.5 million out of $12 million, if in fact the $8 million is received for the 4 buildings. With me? That makes sense, right? So let's say you want to buy this one building, and let's say for some crazy reason you're willing to pay $2.5 million for a building worth $2 million so that you can lock in and you can own that building. Well, let's say no one else is involved in this bidding process, because often nobody shows up for these things, except you've got one lowball bid on the whole deal. I'll buy all 4 buildings for $1 million apiece for $4 million, but I want all 4 of them. I'm not going to take 3 of them. I'm not going to take 1 of them. I want all 4 buildings for $4 million. So for the receiver, should they take your $2.5 million bid over on a $2 million building, or should they take a $4 million bid on $8 million of assets, right? Whose bid is better? Well, your bid is clearly better on the one building, but that's not what the receiver cares about. The receiver cares about how much can they pay back to creditors in total. You're going to lose. They're going to take the $4 million and they're going to pay themselves $1 million of fees. So now they got 3, and the 3 goes to the first mortgage, which is owed 5.5, and 0 is left over to go to the second mortgage. That's what they're going to do if they have no other options. So you overbid for your one asset, but you still lost to somebody who lowballed on all the assets. Now, the receiver, of course, is going to try and wheel and deal. They're going to go back to the lowball person. They're going to say, hey, I'll take that on those 3 buildings, but I can't sell you the 4th building. Are you willing to do that? And maybe they can wheel and deal their way out of that problem, but often not. Often the people putting in the low bid are just saying, no, I want all of them or none of them, because they know that at the end of the day, they have an advantage on that. So you've lost on that. Now, what happens in this scenario with the first mortgage person? The person owed $5.5 million. Do they just sit around and hope to collect their $5.5 million? Or could they bid, say, $6.5 million in the process? So you bid 2.5 on one building, some lowballer put in $4 million. These people put in 6.5, the first mortgage holder put in $6.5 million bid. I don't know this, by the way. I'm just telling you how to think about it, because that's what I would do. Why would I do that? Because how much, if I put in a $6.5 million bid on the 4 assets, how much of a check do I have to write? Do I have to write a $6.5 million check for a $6.5 million bid if I am the successful bidder? Answer, nope, I do not. The check I have to write is $1 million, because that's called a credit bid. a credit bid. So I have to pay the $1 million in cash because that $1 million goes to the receivers and the professionals. But who's next in line? Well, me, as the first mortgage holder, me, and my bid is worth $5.5 million, right? So I say, I'll give you 6.5, I'll do it 1 million in cash, and I'm going to credit bid my 5.5. So I was able to bid $6.5 million by only writing a $1 million check. And if I win, I own with no debt $8 million worth of property. Right? Why would I not do that deal? I'm already in for the 5.5. I might collect it, I might not collect it. I'm not going to collect it all if the lowball 4 million works, right? So why would I not write an extra $1 million check to take over $8 million? So now I'm in for 6.5 and I've got $8 million worth of assets outside of this bankruptcy. Why would I not put that bid in? I've protected my downside and maybe I get a bunch of upside. Whose bid is better now? Clearly, that credit bid from the first mortgage holder is much better. What's the second mortgage going to do similarly? Well, the second mortgage holder in this scenario could bid 18.5 million. Remember, they're owed 12 in the second. And how much of a check would they have to write to bid 18.5 million? Would they have to write an $18.5 million check on $8 million of assets? Nope. Their check would be 6.5 million. 1 million to the receiver, 5.5 million for the first mortgage. I'll pay you 18.5 million, 6.5 in cash, and the rest of it is a credit bid of my $12 million in the second position. And by the way, that's a pretty safe trade for the second mortgage holder, because if the buildings are worth 8 outside of bankruptcy, again, you got the buildings worth 8 for an extra check of 6.5, basically. And so have you got much upside on that? No, but you've protected some of your downside, right? Because every other scenario gave them 0. If the first mortgage holder's credit bid is successful, the second gets 0. If the low ball is successful, the second gets 0. If your individual deal is accepted, the second gets 0. The only way to lock in some money to the second is if in this scenario is to credit bid themselves, right? So you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I just want to buy this one building. Look how complicated this got. Look how complicated this got. And the reason I'm telling you this is because if you want to participate in this game and you didn't know that, you will have spent $200,000 to $300,000 in fees and due diligence and professionals and lawyers and drafting contracts. You will have spent that much money before you found out that you didn't have a hope in hell of winning this. You never had a hope in hell of winning this. Strange things can happen, but within a great amount of certainty, you're not going to win this if you just want that one building. You ought to know that up front. If you're participating in the receivership game, it's great to understand, buying assets. It's great to understand what credit bids are and that credit bids often win. It's great to understand that bidding on single assets are often losing bids. And it's good to understand that before you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars figuring it out. It's a costly lesson. You got it for free. You got it for free on Martinis with Scott, which leads me to my big news. I want to introduce Ekip, Ekip Innovations Inc. Ekip is a play on the French word for team. Happens also be the name of a rapper in France. I think that's neither here nor there. But I went to a bunch of prospective employees. We held a naming contest, and this is what they came up with. So we were able to get that name locked down for a new company, Ekip. The purpose of Ekip Innovations is it is participating in a CIS process. We're trying to buy a business in the auto and aerospace space. It's a highly troubled business, and we're not closed yet. I'm going to give you more information after we close and as we go. So we've got closing risks, we got legal risk in the sense that the court needs to sign off, and there will be a contest against the bid process. And I just want to respect all parties involved, and particularly the court. So, it is what it is. The judge will decide. We've got hostile press and bad press in the jurisdiction where this takeover is happening. calling us hostile actors and all sorts of terrible things, which is the normal course for these sorts of transactions. But remember, my mission is to save jobs in the jurisdictions we're working in the U.S. and Canada, save jobs and create value at the same time. This deal fits that mission pretty damn well. I'm excited about it. We're excited about it. The employees that work for the, let's call it old coal for the bankrupt company are amazing, and they're excited about it. So introducing Ekip Innovations Inc. and expect over the next few weeks more information and details on that transaction, and we will follow the turnaround journey as we always do on Martinis with Scott. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe. Hit us up on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Come follow me on Instagram. What else can I say? Have a great Thursday evening. Talk to you next week.